Hey everyone, welcome back to another video on this beautiful sunshiny day. I'm here at Sugarhouse Park.
That's right, we are at Sugarhouse Park, which is one of the most trafficked parks in the Salt Lake Valley. It has an abundance of green spaces, a huge path for walking and biking, along with a big feature pond. Now the pond was where I was going to focus my attention, along with the creek running into the pond through these long mature trees that you see here. This isn't your typical wildlife refuge or really huge birding hotspot, but I'm determined to show you that you can get some birding in, and some good birding at that, even in just a simple hotspot. So let's dive right into it. I went right up to the water's edge and got low so I could start filming some of the birds immediately around me. Now most of these are gonna be relatively common species, but they're still really cool to see, especially at such a close distance. I won't bury the excitement here, it is also baby duck season, that's right. Birds are currently breeding and there were so many baby mallards. Some of them were domestic mallards, other ones were just plain typical wild mallards, but they were so cute nonetheless. Dawn Dish Soap has done some seriously good branding because I can only think of that as I'm watching these birds. But not sponsored, obviously. That would be a strange sponsorship for me to land this early. And you could get such good clips of these birds. I mean, this one is literally taken with my iPhone, not even my huge wildlife camera, at these parks, because birds are so used to humans because humans are constantly around at such a busy park.
Honestly, my lens is too long for some of these birds here. They come so close. I'm sitting right here.
It's incredible the level of detail and different perspective you can get with these species being so comfortable in our presence. And just covering some of my bases here, that all white duck is still a mallard, it's just a domestic mallard. There's another one out in the fountain that I thought was pretty hilarious, just having a force field around them it looked like. And I just could not stop filming all of the young mallards though. They were so adorable, just trying their hardest to swim around and look for some food. All that rigorous paddling is hard work and it'll tucker a little guy out. So eventually we caught a few on the side, taking a little snooze after so much exercise earlier in the morning. Moving on from these adorable mallards, there is one bird you are most likely to see anytime you bird around a city, at least in the US. That is, of course, the rock pigeon. Now, these birds are frequently written off by people. They're almost sometimes thought of as a nuisance, but look at them more closely. They have such a cool pattern and coloration, and they vary wildly from individual to individual. When the pigeons do their mating displays like this, where they puff out their necks and the sun catches them just right, you can see that iridescence gleam off of their feathers. It's really beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I understand why people often overlook these birds. In fact, I've done it myself. I just notch them down on my checklists and move along really quickly. But today, it was really cool just to focus on some of these common birds and really appreciate the differences between all of them. Like, look how dark this pigeon is compared to the other ones. They have such cool differences, and I contrast that specifically with this incredibly light colored one. They're really beautiful in their own right.
So I've only been here about 10 minutes, but it's already been amazing so far. I think you have to set your expectations if you're an experienced birder going to a place like this, because you're really not gonna see a ton of rarities, most likely. And the amount of species you'll see are gonna be relatively common ones, and you'll see a lot of the same stuff. But if you just look a little closer, you'll learn to appreciate a lot of what's out here. For example, I've just spent like 5 minutes looking at different pigeons, examining their plumages. You'll get some with really dark colored feathers. There'll be some more typical gray ones. I saw a tan one, a white one. You can really appreciate the beauty of some of these common birds. And the other really awesome thing about going to a city park like this is the birds are so tame. They see people all the time, and you can really get close to them and work on some of your photography skills or focus on some of those identification things when you're trying to pick out certain field marks. These city parks are just perfect for that.
And speaking about working on those photography skills, I had a nice subject right in front of me, so I got down real low and snapped a picture of this mallard. It's nothing spectacular, but I feel like it framed nicely, and I really appreciated how it turned out. But moving back to the water's edge, let's take a look at some gulls. Now, gulls are a notoriously hard group to identify, but when you're able to get so close like these birds in front of me, you can really pick out those identification features, like the red spot on the bill of this California gull, the dark iris, and the reddish ring surrounding its eye. Compare that to the single ring-billed gull we saw on this day, you can totally tell the differences much easier. So it's a good way to practice there too. And so this pond delivered a lot of cool experiences for my friend Eddie and myself.
So yeah, I really wouldn't discount these areas. I think there's a chance we could get up to potentially around maybe 15 species. We're at 11 right now. And so you'd be surprised at all these birds people just write off as they're doing their daily activities like walking and biking in Sugarhouse Park. That there's a lot of cool birds just right here, right in town. You don't have to go far to some extravagant area. You can bird just in the areas around your home.
Eddie and I started to work our way around the lake, seeing if we could pick up any different species for today's list. Immediately on the one corner, we came across some house finches, another common bird, but new for us on the day. And a cool behavior we noticed were these juveniles begging the adults for food with the little fluttering wing motion that many birds do. And then a bird surprisingly hard to track down for how loud its screams and calls are. We finally found this screaming killdeer.
Just came across some killdeer just on the hillside here. It is amazing. You see them and they look like your standard shorebird, but they will show up all over. I feel like I've seen them more often in parking lots and construction areas than I have on the actual shore of bodies of water, which is just nuts. They're just like such a generalist bird. And so while this isn't the most wild spot, I'm having a great time here. There's just so many birds around doing various activities. Seen young chasing around their parents begging for food. We got the killdeer screaming. There's swallows going to little puddles to grab water. There's tons of mallards and gulls just out in the water interacting with the people that bring food for them. And so there's a lot to see, even though this is just a city park. Now, I picked this specific park pretty intentionally because it has this huge body of water and there is a creek that flows into the pond here. And so I figured there'd be a lot of good birds along the creek just because a water source brings some stuff in. But this is probably one of the most busy parks in Salt Lake, and there's still tons of wildlife to be seen. And another thing I'll quickly mention is that I do notice a lot of people here feeding birds. Now, I generally wouldn't do this myself, but I'm not wholly against it. It can be a really cool experience to connect people to nature and start to enjoy birding themselves. So I'm never really gonna shout at someone for doing it unless they're feeding the birds bread. Now, if you didn't know, bread is not good for birds. It's kind of just like empty calories. And so if you feed birds bread, they're not gonna use their energy to go looking for food that'll actually be beneficial to them. So if you are gonna feed birds, it's better to use some sort of wild bird seed or an actual bird food so they can actually get some of those nutrients. You'll notice a lot of these birds are used to being fed too because they come right up to you when you walk to the shore. They're definitely looking for those handouts. It kind of turns into this like symbiotic way of life between humans and the wildlife here because it is so busy, and so people will be feeding these birds constantly and they'll be coming to interact with them. Again, like, I don't think this is the worst thing because it does give people a connection to nature and learns to start appreciating wildlife, and it can be a child's very first experience seeing some of these amazing creatures that might spark a lifelong interest in caring for nature and the wildlife.
And we came around the last corner of the lake, and the last bird we were going to see on this part of the loop was a good black-capped chickadee up in the pine tree directly behind me. These energetic little songbirds have a very recognizable chickadee call or hamburger that you will sometimes hear. Completing the loop, I wanted to mix it up slightly and get some birds in flight shots. Now none of these were spectacular, but I did get some good clips of the gulls flying around, and I actually managed to somewhat get some of these fast flying swallows. This was a barn swallow you see right now, but there were a few other species out there too. There were some northern rough-winged swallows, and I did count some cliff swallows on the day also. I tried my hand in photos, but none of them were that spectacular. Now before we wrap up the pond segment and move along to exploring the creek, just one more look at the mallards because I had to. Got this one preening a little bit, and then the babies, of course. Once more, gosh, they're just the most adorable things ever. And I don't know my insects super well, so if any of you know what species this is, let me know in the comments. But it was time to check out the creek now, and I was excited for this because of the huge, tall, mature trees. I figured we could potentially get some good warblers singing in them, albeit it was going to be a hard challenge staring up into the canopy, trying to pinpoint these small little birds. But it was a challenge I was ready to take on. I had heard plenty of yellow warblers already, but hadn't yet seen one today. And so I started by checking out this Eurasian collared dove, foraging amongst the grasses, and watched the nearby fox squirrels looking around. This one may have been attacked or just had some sort of deformity. Its tail was shorter, and it had a little bit of a limp, which was a little sad. But the squirrels were kind of everywhere, and I do think their populations are doing just fine, at least in the Salt Lake area.
Walked away from the pond, just finishing up walking around this really beautiful creek. There's some huge mature trees they didn't take down when they made this park, which has a really good spot for various bird species. The problem is they're high up in the canopy. So I'm hearing yellow warblers and western warbling vireo. Would love to get one of them on video, but it's not looking likely at the moment.
About 2 minutes after I recorded that clip, one came to the ground for me. It's like it heard my pleas and calls and decided to grace me with its presence. This is a beautiful yellow warbler. Not sure what it's looking for here on the ground. I assume some sort of food or maybe even potential nesting material. Not sure, but it was awesome to be able to get these close-up views of this bird that can sometimes be a little bit tough to see, even if it's a bit common. That's pretty much gonna wrap up all the adventure and bird clips I got, but let's check in at the studio so I can review the checklist live.
All right, wanted to wrap up the video here just by reviewing the eBird checklist that I submitted. And we have a visit from my cat. She's very needy right now, so I guess we'll just have to hang out together while I recap this. But just at a park, a place where people largely just like see birds and think of it as just another bird, we saw 18 species. Now that's not a crazy number, but it just, I hope, illustrates that even some of these local spots are great birding areas. And I want to drive that point home as I wrap up the video. I'll flash up all the birds I saw on the screen here so you can kind of see the exact number that we were going through. But just a couple of cool things that there was a good chance to practice some gull ID, comparing the single ring-billed gull we saw with the rest of the California gull. I got to work a little bit on the swallows that were flying around, listening to their calls and trying to improve my identification there. We heard and tracked down 2 screaming killdeer, which was kind of funny. I did get eyes on a western warbling vireo, which is rare because I usually only hear them. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff just at a local park. So don't discount those areas. I hope you go and check out a park here soon. Thank you as always for watching though. I'll see you in the next one. Happy birding. Right, Lola, happy birding.